And three,
I went with
2,
dinner.
1, action. Okay. I love starting a meeting off with laughter. That means that things are in a good sign. Hi, everybody. Hi, Marty. Welcome, Suzanne and Sarah, my better half, and Bruce and Sherry, and everybody out there on my LinkedIn and YouTube. And for those people that trickle in, we actually, this tonight and last week, I decided to do a 10-minute feature presentation before the introduction, educational nuggets. Instead of us calling them elevator pitches, we're now calling them educational nuggets because Bruce finally got to me. I broke down. I finally said, hey, a commercial feels like a screaming salesperson. And I know we're all not salespeople here, and I know that we educate our customers. So we'll go into educational nuggets in the second part of our meeting. And then after that, we will do a 10-second feedback of what you thought of the meeting or what you learned from the meeting, since we all use 2 ears and 1 mouth in more proportion than our speaking. Hey, Arnie, welcome. You didn't miss a thing because we decided to jump into the feature presentation before. So you can take my seat while I'm over here, and I'll sit over here. That's great. I like you at the head. So welcome, Arnie. Has anybody here ever read this book?
Yes.
Think and Grow Rich.
Yes.
Yes.
It's amazing how everybody here has read this book. And if you haven't read this book and you're online and you see this, I highly encourage you to read it, even though, do you know when this book was published? A long time ago.
I read it in 1902.
And he read it.
Yeah.
You read this when it just was.
Sunglasses instead.
This guy over here read this book 2 years after it was published in 1960. Let me shake your hand. And I think the information was gathered from another book called Laws of Success 20 years before that, maybe like 1938 or something like that. So if you ever come across a book series called Law of Success, that was where Napoleon Hill kind of put all the information together in one spot. I took a couple of notes because I know that there are some people out there that either forgot the material in this or they don't read it every single day like I try to do. And some people also stop reading since high school because they just don't like to read. But I learned somewhere along the way, a few decades ago, that reading actually helps your attitude, especially a book like this. An attitude where, wouldn't it be great to have an attitude? Well, let me just say, have you ever been in your car in traffic and somebody cut you off or something?
Sure.
Everybody knows what that expression "cut you off" is, and your emotions got the better of you, and you did a nice friendly wave that didn't look like that, or perhaps maybe I'm not looking at you. I know you sat in traffic, so you're like, "Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me?" As Suzanne like saying, hey, you can see her face looking at me. Or has Bruce ever lost his control in a car? She's shaking her head. Uh-oh. So sometimes attitude gets the better of us, and we don't want that to happen when we're in business situations in front of a client. How many times right before you have a meeting, something happens and you have to put out a little fire over here. And then while you're putting out the fire, your mood is just not in the mood for the client meeting, or not in the mood for your children, or not in the mood for your family, etc. But how would you like to have an attitude where nothing could shake your tree, no matter what age? Raise your hand. Everybody raised their hand. So that's one of the reasons why read this book. I think I'm good for 10 minutes so far still. So Andrew Carnegie and Napoleon Hill got together and wanted to get the message of Think and Grow Rich out to the world. I call this book for short because Sarah likes abbreviations, my better half. And tell everybody how you abbreviate the word exercise.
XRCS.
She actually abbreviates the word exercise. And I'm like thinking, you can't spell that, but everybody's looking for abbreviations. Or is there an abbreviation for, is there a word that you like is not that long, but you just make an abbreviation for it because you just don't want to spell it all out? Anything?
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
And how do you abbreviate that?
S.
And you use that word every day in your practice?
Yes.
Like
In my sleep.
when you're delivering a return, and they're very happy?
Yeah. They ask a question and that's my answer. So I can camouflage the fact that I don't know the answer.
And what color is your cape?
My cape is blue.
Excellent, fantastic. I can see that. Okay, so Andrew Carnegie wanted to inspire with Napoleon Hill all people of all walks of life so they could be just as successful as wealthy people. But I know from the financial business that 95% of 100 people retire broke at 65, either dead, disabled, or broke. And 4%, only 4% are probably wealthy, and 1% is rich. And well, why is that? And we won't go into those whys. That's a whole nother seminar. But I wanted to go over some notes into this book, some more things. Have anybody here heard of a gentleman called Edwin Barnes, except for Marty?
Yes.
You heard of Edwin Barnes? He did. He read this book 2 years after it first came out. Look how young this guy is. He's well preserved.
He's 29 and a half.
Is he
Fantastic.
Noble's partner?
He's been around the block. Did you get a chance to meet Thomas Edison?
Not quite.
I was just thinking
Hey, how
about
you
you.
feeling, young man?
Welcome, Ira, to our 10-minute feature presentation. Grab a cup of coffee. This is our CPR guy and our bookkeeper.
I missed that much. You're on the 10-minute presentation already?
The last couple of weeks, we decided to do the 10-minute feature first so you wouldn't miss all the
So I didn't have to rush my ass off to get here?
He did a very famous French word, by the way, everybody.
You're on video.
Okay, so Edwin Barnes, you've heard of him?
Yes, I have.
Okay, he also read the Think and Grow Rich too, so we can't fool here our Ira. Well, he talked his way into partnership in this book. And these are actually, this is a true story, this whole book, by the way, too. It's not fiction, which makes it even more amazing in itself. So Edwin Barnes, this gentleman, he talked his way and thought his way, he really thought his way into partnership. I don't remember how much the time frame was, but he had a definite purpose. He had a burning desire. And when you read this book so many times, you'll feel like you cracked the code of success. Definite purpose, let me give a sample of definite purpose. I really want us to have $8,000 of instant referrals from this group because we meet every week. I want this group to be your instant toaster of $8,000 worth of referrals. I want us all to, I got your attention now. I want us all to be able to have instant referrals. And it's also definite purpose. I now have a concrete number, $8,000 worth of referrals. And what if we all had $8,000 every week? You think of who else would want $8,000 of referrals every week, then bring them here next week. Edwin Barnes wanted to work with Thomas Edison so badly that he burned his bridges and took a train and went all the way up to Thomas Edison's office without an appointment. And Thomas Edison didn't even know the guy. And he showed up. And he worked his way into Thomas Edison's office. And of course, what would you think would happen if a cold call showed up at your office and you were busy doing taxes and bureaus?
I would say make an appointment. But I think what happened there was when he did that, Edison turned off all the lights and told them to get lost.
Probably close. When somebody is on your office, the chances of them becoming your partner are probably slim, but he still had definite purpose. He still had a burning desire. He still was going to stop at nothing. And he burned his bridges, and Thomas Edison made him a clerk. He swept the floors, did menial jobs for him. That's how he convinced him to do that much, because he burned his bridges. He took a one-way down the train to get to his office. That kind of burning desire, do you do that with your prospects that you haven't met yet, or your next biggest lead? So think about those things. Another great thought that came out of just the first chapter, and there's only 13 chapters, was 3 feet from the gold. In that little segment in the first chapter where thoughts are things, and being 3 from the gold, this guy who bought all of this equipment and went into this mine to mine gold, and these pickaxes, whatever all they they worked their way through the line and they stopped. And something dried up and they lost their senses. They had no idea. I don't know anything about mining for gold, but somehow they stopped. They couldn't figure out where to dig next and they gave up. And what if we all stopped and couldn't figure out where we needed to keep digging, where we were 3 feet from gold, from profit, from retirement, etc.? What if we stopped right where Darby stopped? He took all of his equipment out of the mine and brought it to a thrift store, basically a pawn shop for gold. And the nearest person that came in, this guy sold him all the equipment. He said, "You should go up to the spot." He didn't know anything about gold. He went up to the spot, but what he did was he actually hired somebody, the person who knew nothing about gold, to give him some consultation kind of advice. Somebody that knew a little bit about geology. Somebody that knew a little about, like in your business, Bruce, about taxes, or somebody that really knew the tricks of the trade about medical billing, Suzanne. And just by hiring someone that knew a little bit more information than you, was just enough information where they determined that the gold was in the same place where the other guy gave up. So that gold is in the same place for us here at SPI. And so many people think it could be at BNI, or it could be at SPI, or it could be at the chamber. The grass is always greener somewhere else, or is it? Or is it just another group doing all the right things? And if in those groups they just stuck with it, and then in 3 more feet, they would strike gold, and we'd all have an $8,000 instant toaster. So that 3 feet gold story, even on top of that, and where am I, almost 10 minutes?
I don't know. I can't tell.
They're still pointing at me?
Think so.
The last little tidbit here there's a couple more tidbits in just the first chapter, and so many great nuggets, is this 50-cent, my mammy wants 50 cents. Now I know you guys all read it, but as a refresher, I mean, could you picture this little girl looks just like our little puppy that's already Medicare age, 7 years old, Lucky. And he looks up at us with his eyes, like this little girl looks up at you. And if you had this little girl, 6 years old, staring up at your face, or maybe you have a grandchild, and your little girl is looking up, your grandchild is looking up at you, and she says, "Grandma, could I please have 50 cents? Hanukkah's coming up." But back then when this book was written, 50 cents was a lot more money then. Probably a lot more. So imagine that little girl asking for 50 cents and staring into your eyes, and somehow that look of that girl asking for 50 cents, and you say no the first time. You're like, I don't think much of it, but she's still standing there. And you look back at her, and she's still there, and she didn't budge, and she's asking you for 50 cents. She says, "Please, Grandma, can I please have 50 cents? Please?" And she's not. And she's still staring at you, and she doesn't move. And you go back to Bruce, and you do your taxes, and you do your thing, and you help your client, and then you look to your right or your left, and you still see her standing there. And she says, "Grandma, I need 50 cents. I need 50 cents. I want to get something from the vending machine. I need to have it. Or I want something. Eventually, after 5 or 6 times, she's going to break you. And that power of a child could be the lesson of business people asking for your next order. Maybe the power of, they say you don't get a sale unless you ask for it. How many times have we brought all the information, we did all the education, and then we didn't do the last step. We didn't ask for it like that little girl. And the last thought, well, here's our last thought. Henry Ford was so persistent with the V8 engine, and all of his engineers convinced him, no, it's impossible. And he said, I don't care if physics doesn't make it possible, or engineering doesn't make it possible. I want it, and if I want it, I shall have it. And that was that attitude that Henry Ford had with the V8 engine. And of course, he did succeed at getting them to make it, but none of his people believed he could make it. Like you, none of you probably believe that we can have $8,000 referrals each from you, instant referrals. But I believe that this group will give you $8,000 of instant referrals, and some of you are well on your way and have gotten some referrals here. Some of them haven't, and some of them are a little bit. But believing that we can be persistent, like Henry Ford said, I want, if you get injured, I want $8,000 instant referrals. Thank you for being part of Storytelling Hour at SPI or Sarah Paul International, because one of us was born overseas. If you don't read since high school, you have to at least read this book. I do care if you just read the Audible book, because there's nothing like the pages that you wear out when you read this book 10 times. It's not the same when you swipe. And I don't think it's the same when you highlight and you move the mouse and you can make the different colors and make it look like you read it. But having this book with you so that you can go through the 4 or 5 notes that I just talked about that are in the first chapter of this book is so powerful. And that's the tone that I hope we can start a great meeting. And we're going to go into some introductions, and we'll stop the recording, and we'll go into the meeting. But if you want to catch the rest of the meeting and learn all about these great people, which I love to share with you, but maybe that's the privilege of being here. So how many people here are inspired to pick up this book again and dust it off?
Yes. Yay.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Oh, not